So let's speak today about tzitzis. Tzitzis is the next phase when we wake up in the morning. We put on our tzitzis. What do you mean we put on our tzitzis? Aren't we wearing them to bed? Yes, no, maybe so.
If you do, you've got to put a shop around different pair.
So Uraisa Maisai, that really the halacha is that tzitzis is a daytime mitzvah. So why would a person wear them at night? So the Arizal says is that it protects you. It's not a mitzvah per se, but it's a protection. It's a protection. The nighttime is the time of more vulnerability. Might even call it spooky stuff happens at night. So all the spooky stores open at night. Stay away from certain places at night. You're like, I thought it was just the shuk, like where's all the, fruit stands? What happened? There's like some, wild rave that broke out at night. Am I in the wrong place? Yeah. At nighttime, different things happen. So at night, it's more of a vulnerable time. The Gemara talks about this, to be more careful at night. And therefore, even though there's not a mitzvah of tzitzis at night, people want to be protected by tzitzis, and they wear the tzitzis at night. You're not obligated to, but when you think about it, why wouldn't I want to? If it's going to serve as a protection, why wouldn't I want to? Right? Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're asking the class or not.
Well, this is always in group involvement.
Perhaps, if you're going to be, there's certain things you're not supposed to have, holy things around, right?
Tzitzis are not, what's called, they're not kedusha, they're not like Tefillin. They have a certain level of respect that deserves to them, but they don't have the same level of tashmishe kedusha, that it's like Tefillin, Sefer Torah, even the straps of your Tefillin. The tzitzis can even be put double bagged into the garbage. Some people choose to use it because they had one mitzvah with their tzitzis. If their tzitzis wear out, they'll take the strings off and they'll use them as like a bookmark, in order to take that mitzvah and extend the mitzvah. But tefillin, you can't, you worn out tefillin, you can't use as a bookmark. That has to go in a special geniza, be buried in a special way. There's Hashem's name on it. It's another level of sacredness, of holiness. So the nighttime tzitzis is in order for it to have protection, especially when a person sleeps. We were talking about this, that a person becomes vulnerable when they sleep. On a simple level, even Khabib and McGregor, these great, MMA guys, when they're sleeping, they're vulnerable. As powerful as a person is. I was like, did he really just say those two guys? As powerful as somebody is, Og Melech HaBashan, Goliath, as scary as these figures are, at night, they're vulnerable. And vulnerable means that other spiritual forces can interrupt the person. So when we sleep, that's why we want to protect ourselves at night. There shouldn't be any accidents of other such things. Tzitzis is a way that helps protect the person. Tzitzis. Okay. So now wake up in the morning. So if you're wearing tzitzis, how do you make a new bracha on tzitzis? In the morning, you're already wearing tzitzis. Can you make a new bracha? No, you're already wearing tzitzis.
Can you take it off, put it back on?
You could.
Or put on it.
But the ideal is that those tzitzis are not really a beged yoim, and the best thing would be is to have a new pair of tzitzis. A new pair of tzitzis. The problem is, people say, listen to the following. Tzitzis, you're not chayav to have them at night. There's such a thing called a beged laila. A beged laila means like a blanket. Why don't you, how many corners does a blanket have? 4 corners. Oh! And anybody ever got up and wrapped their blanket around them, walked around a little bit, get a cup of hot cocoa or something from the fridge, from the fridge to make it hot in the middle of the night? Maybe you need tzitzis on there. Maybe your blanket should have tzitzis. What do you say, Max? Should we put tzitzis on our blankets?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it, we never saw it. Why not? Because even if you use it as a, let's say, garment, that is not a garment That's a daytime garment. That's called a nighttime garment. Yeah.
What about a towel?
A towel is also not a garment in general.
Even though you put it around you and it's four-cornered?
Yeah, but it's not a garment, not a beged. It's utilitarian to just dry it. If you're starting a new fashion, you're into towel fashion. Nowadays, I wouldn't put anything past the fashion industry. They're going into towel look. So you're doing the towel thing. So towel fashion would, if that became clothing, and especially the Jewish people adopted that, then you'd be going for, tzitzis. Tzitzis on the towel. And that has to be that enough people accept that that is now a garment. So the answer is by the bed, sheet, we don't put tzitzis. It's a nighttime garment. Even if you wrap yourself with it. What about like pajamas that have four corners? Well, if you only wear them at night, then you're not going to be chayiv in tzitzis. You're not obligated. It's a bedtime garment. So here the question is, if you have a shluf pair of tzitzis, you put this pair of tzitzis on at night, and you wake up, and you want to make a bracha, so you put on a new pair of tzitzis to make a bracha. The problem is, if you only wear this garment at night, maybe this garment is not even chayiv in tzitzis. It's not even, it's a nighttime pair of tzitzis. So why is the tzitzis on it? So maybe the spiritual powers of the strings are no longer effective. There's not a time of tzitzis. So one of the big things that save people is that generally people don't wake up before dawn. Unless you tell me, no, we all wake up before dawn, obviously. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says to do. We're early risers. Which means if you have a shluf pair of tzitzis and you wear that pair of tzitzis at night, and you wear it into the morning time, you're already showing that it's also a day garment. Because by the time I woke up, it was day. And there, you would have the spiritual powers of the tzitzis working for you at night. You would then take that shluf pair off, take a new pair, and make the bracha on tzitzis of the new pair. What about if you're Sephardi and you put on a talus? There, you can wear the same pair if you want during the day and during the night, or you could do what we just said. You have a nighttime pair, and then you wear it into the morning, and then you put on a new pair during the day. You don't even need to make a bracha, because you're going to make a bracha on your talus, and the talus will cover the tzitzis. Also, married people who wear a talus, so I don't make a bracha on my small tzitzis, my talus cotton, because I make a bracha on my large talus, and I have in mind that it's also covering my tzitzis. Yes.
What happens if you dawn late? So you wake up before dawn?
And you don't have a talus?
No, yeah. And you wear tzitzit, the whole thing with the night tzitzit.
So,
it doesn't go into the day at that point.
So a good idea would be to change the pair sometime in the day, where you could make a new bracha. Because otherwise you're never going to get a bracha of al mitzvah tzitzis. Or what you can do is, if you know somebody every day that comes to davening who has a talus, you can say, bro, you want to motz me in that bracha? Or, my dear friend, my distinguished scholar, can you please have me in mind at the recital of your blessing on the four-cornered tasseled garment? Either of the two. I think bro is just more, the common vernacular. Yes, Yankov.
When you just make the bracha on the talis,
Talis golden. This atef bat
You've been
tzitzis.
wearing tzitzis until that morning. Is that not like a?
It's in bracha v'atol. I'm wearing tzitzis. How can I make a bracha on tzitzis? I have tzitzis on.
Right, but is the thing like make the bracha right before you put.
Or yosin.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I already had tzitzis on.
You've been having them on, and now you're making bracha with it.
So here's an amazing thing. A very common time that people make a bracha, even if they're talus people, on a new pair of tzitzis is, anybody know when? Even if you wear a talus and you generally don't make a bracha al mitzvah tzitzis. So when would you get a bracha of al mitzvah tzitzis? Not a bracha of al mitzvah tzitzis. You say the shem mitzvah tzitzis, but a bracha asher kiddushan mitzvahs of mitzvah al mitzvah tzitzis. When do you get that bracha? If you put a new one during the day, and when does that generally happen in the life cycle of the Jewish man? In the mikvah before Shabbos. Because what, you're going to wear weekday tzitzis? It's Shabbos. Nice, Shabbos tzitzis. Fresh strings, cosmic dental floss. Get involved. Okay? So here's an example though. You get out of the mikvah, and you, by the way, part of going to the mikvah is you're taking off your weekday clothing and you're putting on Shabbos clothing. That's one of the things that a person thinks about when he goes to the mikvah is I'm taking off my weekday clothing, which means all my spiritual weekday energy, and I'm putting on Chalukah D'Rabbanan, Shabbos clothing. My soul is getting dressed in higher, fresh stuff. So that's why when you come out of the mikvah, you put on fresh clothing. But the question comes up, how do you make you're supposed to make a bracha, right? Al mitzvah tzitzis. But you're in the mikvah. How do you make the bracha al mitzvah tzitzis? You can't. You're in a changing room. You can't make the bracha in there. Do I need to go out of the mikvah to make the bracha and then to come back in? What should you do? So you want to hear what Ben Sion Abba Shaul says? He explains that put on your tzitzis. Don't make al mitzvah tzitzis. Walk out of the mikvah, where it's now clean, wash your hands. Then make the bracha while the tzitzis are already on you. Asher kiddushan mitzvahs of tzivana al mitzvah tzitzis. Then shake the garment a little bit. Hey, why can I do that? I'm already wearing the garment. Once you already take your lulav and esrog, can you make the bracha on it? No, you already did the mitzvah. Once you already blow the shofar, can you make the bracha after? No, you already blew the shofar. How do you make the bracha after you did the mitzvah? The mitzvah's done. The bracha has to be done before the mitzvah, but if the mitzvah's done, I put on my tzitzis. Says Reb Ben Sion Abba Shaul, based on the Gemaras, that the tzitzis is not a mitzvah that's a one-moment mitzvah. The mitzvah of tzitzis is a constant mitzvah. Every second you're wearing tzitzis, there's another obligation that you're fulfilling. So at every moment you're fulfilling the obligation. I wasn't able to make the bracha for those first few moments because I was in the mikveh. But the second I get out and my hands are washed, every second Hashem is giving you mitzvahs. Every second, new mitzvahs on tzitzis. So now the first available second that I can make a bracha on mitzvah tzitzis, on the new of tzitzis, I make that bracha. And I do this as like just a bit of a symbolic of I'm like putting it on. Even though it's on. Because every second there's a new mitzvah on tzitzis. So that's an example where people who have a bracha that they always make only on the talis and not on the tzitzis, they would still make the bracha on al mitzvah tzitzis because they put on a new pair of tzitzis during the day. So far so good? I love tzitzis. Yes? Tzitzis, by the way, means to see.
If you're sleeping in tzitzis, and then you wake up and then you put on new pairs, you can make a bracha then.
Yes.
But if you use talis gadol, then you wouldn't make that bracha?
That's right. Like Sfardim, who they wear talis, even from the time they're young, usually bar mitzvah, so they don't ever make al mitzvah tzitzis unless they change their tzitzis in the middle of the day. Because they make lisatef batzitzis, and it covers the talis cover. You might have asked me the question of, how do you make lisatef batzitzis on your talis? You're wearing tzitzis. The answer is, the real mitzvah of tzitzis is your talis. That's the real tzitzis. Yeah, Max.
So is it okay to have a nighttime only pair of tzitzis that you put on each evening, you wear it into the morning, and then you change out of it and you say the blessing on the daytime?
Correct. As long as it's by the daytime. Yeah. Because you're only obligated in tzitzis during the day to make the bracha. And that you want to have a shluf pair, and like we said, as long as that shluf pair goes into the day a little bit, that it gives it the spiritual status as being a garment that would be obligated in tzitzis, for you to have, let's call it the spiritual protection that the night tzitzis affords to a person. Yeah.
When you put on your so-called Floss tzitzis,
Shlof tzitzis.
you don't make a bracha on that.
No, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
You're not chayv in tzitzis. Ure'isimos, so you have to be able to see. The mitzvah tzitzis, the mitzvah is for a day garment. The protection of the nighttime tzitzis is good advice from the Arizal. After we explained rationally that the nighttime is a more spiritually challenging time, you want to have protection at the night, not to be bombarded by spiritual energies.
But because you're not chayav, you lose out on what?
Nothing.
Okay, great.
You lose out on nothing. You only gain the spiritual protection.
So the problem
You lose out on, you don't make a bracha because you're not obligated in a bracha. You can't make up times to make brachas. You can only make brachas at the times that Chazal, the sages, prescribe for us to make brachas. So there's no bracha on the nighttime tzitzis, but there's spiritual blessing that you're receiving.
which is protection, but there's no.
Basically, a Jew should wear tzitzis all the time. They're not obligated. Don't mistake. This is not a halachic point, but it's a good idea. Obviously, not in the shower. Obviously, not in the mikvah. But a Jew, essentially, I'll tell you something. My kids have never seen me without tzitzis, ever. Their whole life. So that's many, many years. Because a Jew is always wearing tzitzis. Remember we said tzitzis is every second is spiritual blessing. Every second.
Even when you don't have the chiyuv, like at night.
So there's the spiritual blessing and the spiritual protection. The spiritual protection. Well, not that you can make a bracha on, but the spiritual protection that you have an aura now of holiness around you that is protecting you. The Vilna Gaon, famously, the Vilna Gaon, we know, he passed away on Sukkot. We have an account, firsthand, passed down, ish mi pi ish, from multiple first-hand witnesses, recorded, passed down through many, many sources of the event of his death. It was on Sukkot. He was holding his lulav and esrog at the time of his death, and he was also holding his tzitzis. And he was crying. And he was looking at his tzitzis, and he said, in this world, for a few kopek, a few, pennies, you could buy a pair of tzitzis. Tzitzis are cheap. You could buy a pair of tzitzis, and you could accrue eternal reward. Every second. It's such an easy mitzvah. Every second, eternal reward. Where I'm going, though, is there going to be no more tzitzis. And he was looking at his tzitzis thinking, tzitzis, we said, means to see, to gaze. Tzitz. Tzitzis are connected to the Kohen Gadol had the tzitz. The very cool gold headband, which we'll talk about another time. The tzitz, the spiritual vision, ure'isimos, to look at the tzitzis. It protects a person. To look at the tzitzis. And the Vilna Gaon said, I can't believe it. Where I'm going, I can't have this so easy mitzvah to do. Tzitzis are major. And that's why right at the beginning of the day, this is one of the first things we do, is we put on mamish the spiritual powers of the tzitzis. We'll talk more about tzitzis. B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zaying the Mashiach tzidkenim him. Amen. Have a wonderful day, my friends.
You put on a new pair, or you use the same pair? It's like one for the night and one for the day.
So you can do both. Whatever one is good for you. You can use tzitzis for a couple of days and then change them.
What's the problem with waiting right after dawn if you have your night tzitzis?
No problem. That actually helps the fact that the tzitzis will be a night that will have the status as also a day garment, in order to turn it into a garment that's not just a night garment, and thereby making it into a garment which is also obligated in tzitzis, because it's a day garment as well.
And then at night you get the because of that?
Not quite, because during the day part, it's the obligation. The nighttime is the of protection, of spiritual protection. Well, not the schar that you could make a bracha of asher kiddush al mitzvahs if it's al mitzvahs tzitzis. There, for the bracha of the mitzvah tzitzis, it's day.
During the day there's two parts of every second, right?
Every second.
Protection and there's
and the mitzvah.
schar for the mitzvah.
That's right.
At night you only get the protection.
Yes.
Got it.
Because tzitzis is only for the day. But the spiritual protection of the reality of tzitzis is also at night. That's what the Arizal said, a Jew should keep his tzitzis on all the time. And don't be embarrassed. Let the world say what they want to say.
So if you keep them on until you wake up after dawn, right? They're now daytime tzitzis also. And what is that?
Daytime tzitzis, which means that it was not a nighttime garment, not obligated in tzitzis. I make it that garment that I wore at night was also a day garment, and therefore, through the night, it also had a status of the protection of tzitzis. You hear the lumdis? If it's only a nighttime garment, then it's not obligated in tzitzis.
Right.
It's a nighttime garment. It's like putting tzitzis on my my dog, or like a bed sheet. It's a nighttime that you wrap yourself around. It's not obligated in tzitzis.
And then you don't get the protection if it's only a nighttime garment.
So that is a question. Either you don't get the protection, or you certainly don't have a garment that was ever obligated in tzitzis.
Right.
And therefore, so what is this?
What is it?
I have something which is not, it's like putting it on my dog. If you tie tzitzis to your dog and put your dog on, talk about fashion, wrap yourself in your dog, that's not tzitzis.
You probably wouldn't be protected.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you're not, because, you put strings on all sides. There's cardboard boxes there. Let's put some strings on the box.
The owner of the dog's a Jew, your dog's a Jew.
So,
it's male.
Bar mitzvah.
Bar mitzvah.
Okay, Bezrat Hashem, we should be safe. Call the Torah Kula.